Welcome to the Spring Hills Podcast. It's 2021 and we are back. We've been on a break for the past couple of weeks, so it's great to be back here in the green room to bring you some more conversations, discussions, interviews, all the different things that we are going to be bringing over the next few weeks. It's going to be a lot of stuff. I can't wait for it. Today, we have a special episode that we're doing with a few guests here, first-time guests. We've got Mikhail Jones, also known as True Lyric. He's a recording artist, local recording artist, that we had come in for Emotion Night back in the beginning of last year, right? So
yeah,
January, somewhere around. I know it was around in the winter at some point.
I think it was January. Yeah.
So you were here for that. And then Brielle Higgins, you are part of the Spring Hills team here as a Stephen minister and a small group leader, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, but Mikhail, you aren't part of the Spring Hills family as far as attending here. Like I said, you came for Emotion Night. You're part of a different church where your dad pastors. And then, of course, I've got John Barrett back. He's been here. I think you're coming up on, maybe besides Brett, you've been on it the most.
Quite a few now. Yeah.
Brett,
I love it.
Brett has probably the record right now. Besides me, obviously.
I was going to say.
I have been on every single episode. Can you believe it?
Brother, I can't believe it. Who would have thought that?
Today, our topic is we're going to talk about battling depression, and I think we'll probably talk about anxiety a little bit as well. The reason I wanted to do this is because I know that it's something that millions of people deal with on a daily basis. It's not something that's uncommon. I personally have not dealt with it on the level that I think that we're going to hear from our guests here today. So I wanted to bring in some people. Now, we've got John, who you all know is one of our Stephen Minister leaders, and he counsels some people. John, you've also got some experience with dealing with anxiety.
Yes.
Did you say depression as well, or do you just classify it as?
Depression, more so anxiety, but I've definitely been withdrawn enough to where, yes, it was clinically called depression as well. Yeah.
Okay. And then Mikhail, let's start with you. Let's hear a little bit about you, where you're from, how old you are, your family, what you do. Obviously, I already said you're a recording artist, but you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I'm from Sonoma County, born and raised. My family is from here as well, and I've lived here my entire life. My battle with depression started around leaving high school, which was approaching 10 years now. So it's been a long.
I'm coming up on 15, man.
Well,
so.
yeah,
John, how long's it been? No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, it will be 30 in June.
Sorry to cut you. I heard you went to high school with Sherry Barrett, correct?
And John.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Sorry to cut you off, Mikhail. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I always felt like I was still the young guy until I started. I was a manager at Best Buy, and one day I realized all my employees were so much younger than me, and I made a reference to All Star by Smash Mouth. And they were like, "Who's Smash Mouth?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm old now." So
I know who Smash Mouth is.
Smash Mouth came and played at the county fair in my hometown.
Yes.
And that's kind of that's the signature. Once you play the Stanislaus County Fair, it's time to retire.
Right.
I think it's time to go.
You might be an old guy.
Yeah.
right.
So yeah. Cool, man. All right, Brielle, let's hear a little bit about you. Where are you from? What's your family story? Briefly, I guess. We don't need to dig too deep into it, but just let people know who you are.
I was born and raised in Novato and then drifted around after college and played the game and moved to Massachusetts for 12 years and then moved back here. And it's been 5 years that I've been here. I have a husband and 2 beautiful daughters.
Cool. And you said Massachusetts. What part of Massachusetts?
I was over by Boston.
By Boston. And 12 years did not give you the accent?
No, my husband has it.
He does? Is he from Boston?
He's born and raised Boston.
I want to meet him.
Oh,
I love talking to people
him.
from. Oh, I have.
Yes,
you
have.
Okay, I want to talk to him more then.
Yes.
This is another thing. I hate this about me, but I forget the people I've talked to. Like I'll see somebody and be like, oh, I'll run into him at Target or something like that, and I'll talk to them, and then like if I hear their name, I'm like, I see your name, on the team list or whatever it is, and I don't put names to faces. So I probably have talked to him a few times and then don't realize that Higgins is, what's his first name?
Glenn Higgins.
Glenn Higgins. So I'm sure I know Glenn. It's somewhere. Glenn, I'm sorry. You're going to listen to this. I promise. I'm better at remembering faces than I am at remembering names. Cool. So yeah, I want to talk to Glenn about Boston. If he's a Boston sports fan, I love talking about Boston sports.
He's all over the place.
Today we are going to talk about battling depression and anxiety. And I wanted to have you have you come in, because all of you come in to share your experiences, share how you've overcome your battle with it, or how you're still dealing with it. Mikhail, I know that you specifically, we were talking before this, and you said that it was a tough week for you here. So I'd love to hear more about that too, and just kind of how you're dealing with it, how you help others with it as well. So let's start by just defining it. I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe, and I probably would consider myself one of them, that I don't know much about what it actually means to be depressed. It's not just sad. I know it's a lot more than that. So let's just define it. And you can jump in whenever you want if you've got, something you want to add to it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that question on the list, and that was the one that like haunted me the most, because I was like, I don't know if I've ever actually like sat down with the idea of like how would I define depression. But yeah, I would say it's definitely not a mood, but a state of your mind, and not necessarily one that is that easy to control.
It's not just an emotion.
Right. Yeah. Far from an emotion, but something that can kind of shift every single aspect of your life. So it's a lot more powerful than an emotion.
Yeah, I would say it's a persistent downtroddenness, where you're constantly feeling overwhelmed. I would say, and at times you feel nothing at all because it's beyond that. Also, there's a sadness to it, but it's a deep sadness. To Mikhail's point, it's not just an emotional sadness. It's a full mind, body, and soul sadness to where you feel drained. And also for me, depression, anxiety can be manifested in physical pain as well, where I ache physically. So it's not just a mental thing. I mean, it comes out in soreness. It comes out in your stomach being upset, just a very overwhelming state.
So while it's not an emotion, it affects
all of that.
emotions,
Yeah.
affects your
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah, and you become withdrawn.
Health.
You become almost incapacitated at times at its worst, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you? Is it like have you experienced inability to even communicate?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really, you have anything to add on that?
Oh, not to be technical, but it's a
No.
disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for me,
Please be technical.
depression, I didn't even realize that I was depressed. But when I first got diagnosed with seasonal depression, I realized I was crying every single day, every day. I don't even know what it was. And then this time around with COVID, I wanted to just sleep. I didn't want to get up. I didn't see any reason to get up. I just wanted the days to just disappear. And it's an overwhelming sadness, but I also can get very angry. It's called an anger depression. So it's
Is
a
it
lot
angry
of
at people, like your family, like people around you, or is it angry at yourself? What is it?
Oh, it's angry at
everything.
yourself. It's angry at your husband, the ones that are closest to you, especially in COVID when you're living with them. They can ask you a question and you just bark at them. And then you're sitting there like, why did I just explode? What is making
To the people
me?
that I love.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot. There's a lot of symptoms to depression. And I think that's one of the hardest part about it is being diagnosed is because we don't know that we're right in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah. So it almost it sounds like just hearing the three of you talk about it. It's hard you can't really define it because it sounds like everybody deals with it in a different way. There's different ways that it affects you. Not to say, I guess you could define it, but there's just a lot to it. It's bigger than just defining like you said, it's not just a mood.
Yeah. I mean, I looked up, they give definitions of it, and it's a disorder that's what clinically it is. And it's a persistent sadness and withdrawnness and all of that. But I think it's more than that. Would you guys not agree?
Yeah.
And I think for every person, it looks different.
Absolutely.
Man?
Is it something, now we didn't get too far into it. Mikhail, when did you become a Christian?
Let's see. So the history of it. So when I was really young, my dad was kind of lost out in the world, on drugs, involved with like gangs and whatnot. So he wasn't around for the first few years of my life. He went into rehab, and that's actually where he found Christ. And so it was about the age of 6 for me when I had my dad back who is now a believer, and he's, getting us to go to church. And so through that is where my mom eventually got saved, and then I got saved as well. So around the age of 8. And then as my dad stayed in the church, he, progressed, became an elder, and then eventually a pastor. But I didn't feel like I had my own personal relationship with God for quite some time. I was like playing the church role, being the good, like, pastor's kid. But it wasn't until I was like 17 where, and it was actually kind of in the midst of dealing with depression for the first time, where I decided to give God a legitimate try. And then that's where I kind of called my real salvation, where I had my first experience with God, started my relationship with him. And so it's been a little over about 12 years now.
Okay. And since it was actually, you're saying that it was a little bit aligned with the start of your struggles with depression, did you feel any, and the reason I ask this is because I've talked to a friend of mine who felt guilty as a Christian dealing with depression, because now, unfortunately, I think that's partly because he was given some bad advice, or, someone trying to encourage him went the wrong way with it, and it made him feel more like, oh, maybe I'm not really a Christian if I don't have joy in Christ, like that.
100%.
Did you have any of that at all?
Oh yeah, especially as a pastor's kid too.
Sure.
Because I was like, if
like how
there's something
how
wrong
dare
with
you be
me,
this sad if you have Jesus?
Yeah, and I felt like I couldn't talk about it, because if there's something wrong with me, then is my dad not a good pastor?
Oh,
because
yeah,
he's my father, and so there's all kinds of complicated emotions in there. And there's this weird like stigma amongst most Christians that you have to be like this super happy Starbucks employee that's like constantly, hey, how you doing? How's everybody going?
What can I get you?
Yeah, and it was just not like that for me. And I was
Room
like,
for cream?
Right. So it was weird, like
Not real.
trying to, definitely. And for me, there was that struggle of like, am I a Christian if I feel this way? Like, can I be a Christian? Like, can I believe that God has everything in his control, even if I feel so sad inside? And that's a struggle that I think a lot of people deal with, and a lot of Christians don't talk about, because of that weird stigma where we feel like we can't, because then everyone's like, well, are you a Christian? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I definitely felt
Now,
that.
Brielle, you became a Christian as an adult, right?
Yes, I did.
And was this after you had discovered your issues with this, or really found out about your issues with it, or was it before? What was the timeline there?
It was before.
Okay.
I became a believer in God when I was 25, I think I was.
Mm-hmm.
No, I had no idea about my anxiety or depression.
Oh, okay.
I had it, but I didn't
You
have
didn't
a
know
clue.
what it was.
No, I had no clue.
And have you experienced any of that, any kind of guilt or anything over that?
No, I don't think so, because every church I went to, there was this honesty that I wanted, and I was so angry that I wanted to be happy, that I didn't really see the guilt.
Sure.
I don't know. I never even thought about that part.
Oh. I mean, this is another example of how it just affects people differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
John, you're in ministry. I don't know what the timeline was for you when you felt like you were dealing with it the most, but was it while you were on staff here? Or?
Oh, both.
Okay.
Yeah, before and after. I think when I joined staff, it became more about spiritual warfare. It was the enemy not liking the fact that I was going onto the front battle line for God. And so I saw that for what it was. That was very clear to me. So that was more spiritual warfare. And I was able to deal with that relatively easily, through the power of the Holy Spirit and just getting into God's word and trusting him to fight off those arrows. Just real quick with what Mikhail said, a lot of times Christians, because they feel guilty about being anxious, they begin to question their faith, and that's something that you see a lot and you worry about. You don't want people to do that, because they don't need to be questioning their faith, because having depression and struggling with anxiety doesn't make you a weak Christian, right? We know in this world we're going to have trouble. So our faith in God will see us through that, but it's a process at times, and sometimes you are going to struggle. For me, I struggle with anxiety. I would say soon after. Well, I would say I struggled with inadequacy, because we struggled to have children. My wife and I, we got married, and we've been married for 21 years, and more than anything, we wanted to have a child. It took us about 4 years. I had fertility issues, and so I really questioned myself as a man, and really began to withdraw from God and her, and just from everyone. I just felt inadequate, and so we got through that. And then being raised in a Catholic family, being raised in a family, I love my father, but he was not one to talk about his feelings at all. So I felt like I had to hold inside the things and emotions that I had felt, and I wasn't able to share them. So I took on huge burdens, and that kind of brought me down. I would say after high school, early college, and then once I became a father and married, all that responsibility began to really take its toll on me, and I became overwhelmed. So those are the times where I've really felt hard depression.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but you and your wife were in here, Sherry. You were in here yesterday. We talked about parenting teenagers, and very briefly, you guys talked about the infertility. And I was actually gonna text you guys and see if that would be a good topic, because we're bringing you guys back in next week.
Love to,
because that was going to be the topic I was going to suggest.
That'd be
after
great.
Hearing that from you guys. So
yeah, we have a pretty good story. We'd love to share it with people.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some a lot of episodes with some of the marriage mentors, and John and Sherry are going to come in next week, and we're going to talk about. So now we just made the decision, everybody, not live, but that's what our topic is going to be with John and Sherry.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
We'll discuss it. So I want to you, Mikhail, as you said 17, 18 years old, right? When you really noticed you were struggling with it. It affects kids and adults both. It's not something that's just something that you grow into or you grow out of. I'm sure that there's some people that say, yeah, I really struggled with it when I was younger and have felt like I've learned how to cope with it and that kind of thing. I'm sure that there's different stories of how long people dealt with it when they dealt with it. Right. But I did want to ask the question, just like, is this a problem for both kids and adults? Did you all experience it as kids and adults? And how does it differ between the way it affects kids and the way that affects adults?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a problem that affects kids and adults in many different ways, and
we're probably seeing it more now with COVID. I mean, definitely. Like it's we've heard a lot about it too. I don't know if it's more just we're hearing more about it, or if it really is causing more cases of it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, thankfully, I feel like the world is slowly learning to talk about the harder things a little bit more. So like this podcast, and the reason I was so excited to come on it is like these conversations need to happen. People need to hear that, you will go through those kind of things, and that's okay that you are dealing with it. And that's something that I didn't hear when I was younger, that I needed to. And that's what my whole, like everything with my music is all geared around, really kind of like my mindset. I'm working on a project right now that is written like as my mindset as a high schooler, to other high schoolers, really, because there was so much that I needed to hear that I didn't hear, and I wasn't hearing it from artists. I wasn't hearing it from churches, from friends. So yeah, it absolutely affects kids, adults, and it shows up in many different ways.
I think also just for speaking for myself here, I think it's good for people that don't deal with it to hear from people that do, because a lot of times it's not really understood, because it could cause probably some issues. And I don't know if I'll get to this question too, but within your relationships, because people don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand it. Like, why are you so down? Why can't you just be happy? Like that kind of, because that's something that I think going on another little tangent here. My wife, when she really understood my struggle with being ADD, she really started to go, oh, you're not just being rude to me. You're not being disrespectful. You're literally just not able to focus on this long enough to give me the attention on this. And she doesn't get irritated with me. As quick. No, I'm not. My wife will get irritated with me. Don't get me wrong. But, there's certain things where she'll just be like, and it happens with the band here every now and then. Someone will be like, did you realize you just walked out of the room mid-conversation? And I'm like, nope. I had no clue. And no one holds it against me, because they're like, it's just Garrett. He's not meaning it to be, he's not trying to be rude or anything like that. But similarly, knowing when you've got a friend or a spouse or a kid that deals with it, you can learn to, I mean, it's probably strengthens the relationship once you understand that, right?
It does. My wife never dealt with it. You know, I've dealt with it. She's dealt with it as my wife. My son, Jordan, like we talked about, has dealt with it. She's dealt with it as his mother. And it's strength. It has really strengthened the relationships because it forces you to listen better. It forces you to understand better. It forces you to know what it means to be in someone else's shoes, walk in someone else's footsteps, both ways. I have to respect the fact as her husband that she hasn't ever experienced that. So I can't expect her to know exactly how to deal with it. That wouldn't be fair. But at times when I'm in it, I expect her to. But the times that I'm not in it, I have to understand that. And so you work on that. It's a process. It's not easy, and it takes a long time. It's taken us 21 years to get to a pretty balanced state with it.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, Brielle, you mentioned that go ahead.
I was going to piggyback off
Yeah,
of Mikhail
Piggyback
because
away.
the biggest thing for me right now, and one of the reasons why I'm going back to school, is because I want to break the stigmatism. I want to break this feeling of you're failed, you're wrong, or you're a bad person because you have depression. It is something that happens to anybody and everybody, and it's okay to speak about it. It's okay to talk about it. That's why I jumped at this opportunity, and I was very humbled by it.
Last minute, because
Yeah.
Geraldine was going to be here to discuss it, and yesterday when she had to back out of it, I texted Garrett Ward, or I asked Garrett Ward, I'm like, you got any Stephen ministers, someone that's dealt with it, can help people, and you were the first person you brought up, so I'm glad you were able to be here.
Oh, very humbled by it.
Yeah.
But it's just
There was a fist bump between John Barrett and Brielle right there that I wish you could have seen. Oh yeah, Mikhail, don't.
It's such a soapbox thing for me because I'm going to spill the beans and say that I am going to school. I'm going the process of getting my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And this is a huge thing for me, is because I just want to break it. I want it to be okay. I want it to be normal, even though we should not be using that word, but it needs to be said that it's okay, and that you have people that can support you and love you no matter what. And God accepts us all as is. There is a reason why we're all here. There's a reason why we have our faults or our issues. It's to help others, because that's the whole point of Jesus, is to love on everybody, no matter what. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just to be able to love on people and let them have a chance to speak their truth.
Yeah, which is probably what led you into Stephen ministry.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's emphatic, yes. It's ironic hearing more about this. It's ironic that being isolated probably, I mean, it's got to just make it worse, right? Like being isolated, I can't see how that would be good for anybody struggling with this. Is that right?
Yeah. And we were talking about it, how
Yeah.
I was on tour in March, and it was our first time on a national tour. So it was literally like the best months of my life. We had just announced that we were pregnant, on the road with my band, playing shows in different states. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is my year. 2020, like all the blood, sweat, and tears I've put into this. And like, this is it. And then we're on our way back from New Mexico. And then we get the Nixle for the shelter in place, and just everything flipped. It went from having the world at my fingertips to being in my living room.
Like you could taste the dream,
24/7.
right?
Yeah, and it was devastating. Like, I can't even explain enough how, like, that like, I had really dealt with depression in a long time, since high school. But when that happened, that was like, I was like, it's over. My career, like, I've invested my entire life into this, and it is over in hours. Like, here I am in the living room, and everything is gone.
Yeah.
And that, like, I can't even explain that feeling. But it was, yeah, it's being isolated was like the worst part, because being out on tour, like, you're out on the road, you're meeting new people, and now I'm just in the living room, like, scrolling Facebook.
Yeah.
Like,
Now
everyone-
that's kind of a forced isolation. Does it also does dealing with depression, have you noticed yourself force yourself into isolation because of it in any way?
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird, like, it's not good for you, but you still do it.
Is it out of like you don't want to burden somebody else? Is it shame? Is it embarrassment? What is it?
I think it's a little bit of everything.
Okay, or is everybody different?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's experience, I'm sure, is different. My personal experience, I don't even know why I isolate myself, but it's like I just don't feel like it. Like I'll have, like I want people to check in on me, but I'm also not checking my texts or calling people back, and I don't know why. It's like I want people to like care, and I'm like, why does no one care? But also like I'm like making it so they can't show me that they care. And yeah, it's like this self-loathing, like just you spiral. I always refer to it as a spiral because as soon as it starts, you just allow every reason to like feed into it. And before you know it, you're like, no one cares about me. I hate my life. Like this is all terrible. And people are trying. And, you know, I see like the people that have been trying, and I always apologize to people once you're kind of like out of that, like, thank you for, like, I see your efforts, and I'm sorry. Sometimes everyone who's listening to this that has tried to reach out to me and I take like months to get back to you, I apologize. And I thank you, but it's hard. And if you're dealing with someone that has depression, notice like you're going to get that kind of response sometimes. Yeah. And blow their phone up. Like we shouldn't have to do that, but that's kind of how it is sometimes, where like I don't feel like someone cares or whatever if it's just one text. But sometimes that person that's like nagging at you like really changes your day and it just reminds you that you aren't alone, because we can get in that spiral real quick and you stay in it for a while.
And for me, that spiral and that withdrawnness sometimes becomes more comfortable than being out there with everybody else. And I get fear sets in and I'm afraid to step back out. And that's scary because I'm a very, very extrovert person. I love being with people. I love ministering to people. I love engaging people. And I haven't been in that way in a long time. That being said, I understand how depression works and I understand how my anxiety works. It'll flare up once in a while. And so I have to be really cautious of that. But when I've had those severe moments in my past, it's just, you get into it and it's like, I'm in my happy place, but it's a totally distorted happy place. I'm not really happy, but you convince do you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You convince yourself that this is okay.
It's your own like illusion.
Yeah, exactly, man.
This is how
and
I'm
it's
happier.
way off to where else, you know, not where we need to be.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
is this, go ahead, Brielle. Sorry.
Thank you, Mikhail, for saying that,
Yeah.
because you made me realize that's what I was doing probably at the same time you were doing. I was spiraling and I didn't get into my happy place where I was just like, oh, I don't want to go outside.
Yeah.
Forget it.
It's easy.
This is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very community-based person, and I like talk and I like to move around, and I love just talking to people and being around people. And you get into that depression mode, especially with COVID, with March and April and June and July, and it kept going on. And I work from home, so it's not like I can leave anytime soon. And it's like, you just don't want to leave. My husband's like, oh, you want to go outside? No, I don't want to go outside. Why would I want to do that?
Right.
Even though it would help me to go outside. But it's like you get into that hole and you don't even realize until, hindsight later, that you were in that sick little depression pocket hole.
Yeah, I totally get that. There will be times, especially when the quarantine first started, where it would be like a week and I would just realize like I haven't left the house. Like not even left the house, but I haven't walked outside or like opened the blinds or anything. Like I've just been like in that fake happy place inside my living room, like torturing myself, thinking that for some reason this is better and this is what's going to make me happy, even though we know it. And that's part of just the handicap of depression, where we know, like deep inside, you're not in a good place and you're not doing what's best for yourself. But at the time, you're like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Fine on the couch.
Is this something, now, Mikhail, I know I've already heard this from you. I'm guessing that the answer is going to be a yes here. Is this something that you've dealt with on a regular basis throughout your whole adult life? Brielle, same thing for you. John, same thing.
Yeah. Comes and goes in waves for sure. Sometimes it's like tiny, like no huge deal. Other times it's like, man, it just really shows up. But yeah, I think you learn like tips and tricks on how to fight it throughout your life. But yeah, for me, it definitely comes and goes in waves.
And Brielle, you said seasonal depression for yourself. Does that mean? Well, let's talk about seasonal depression for a minute, because is it like waves of hope of like, oh, I don't feel this way anymore, and then it just like all of a sudden will come back, like a wave the opposite way, I guess.
I'm gonna just show you. I'm gonna tell you a story.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in California. Very much an outdoorsy person. I moved to Massachusetts in October. And what happens?
How cold was it?
I was living in a jacket. I mean, like a full-on parka blanket that was down to like almost my ankles. And I mean, literally, sometimes I would sleep in it. And I went through that winter so happy. But by the time January came around, that's when I said earlier that I was crying every day. And I couldn't figure out why I was crying. And so for what it is you don't spend as much time outside, and so you don't get the vitamin D. And the vitamin D, if you get deficient, it just ruins it. It causes the depression. So that's why it's so important to go outside, because the sun will give you the vitamin D that you need, and then hopefully you won't be so depressed. So the tricky thing that I fought with my therapist for years on this, the Happy Light. Everybody's heard about those Happy Lights. They work. I have one, and it starts raining here in California, and I flip it on.
What is okay, I don't know what this is.
Okay, so it's just a light. I can't tell you what kind of light it is. It's a specific,
like a lamp?
It's a little, yeah, I have a little box.
Okay.
Yeah, and what you don't want to face it. You want to have it to the side, but it's getting into your eyes. And it just gives you that vitamin D that you need.
Interesting.
And I thought it was a bunch of hooey, and I didn't want to spend any money on this. And then finally I did, and immediately 20 minutes, that's all you need a day. And it does help. I don't know the science behind it, but it works.
So on a rainy day, this is something that really comes in.
The rain comes in, and I just plop it on my desk.
And it's called a Happy Light?
I think this brand
is that your name for it?
I think the brand was called Happy Light.
Interesting.
But
I've literally never heard of this, so that's super interesting.
It's a big thing in the East Coast.
Okay.
In the
well, I guess
areas.
That makes more sense. We are in a very like sunny area, huh?
And my doctor was like, I don't understand how you didn't know that you were this tired, that it was because of vitamin D deficiency. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know this? I'm a California
girl. You grew up in Sonoma County, yeah.
Yeah, we have sun every day.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I always wonder, because it's a chemical imbalance.
Okay.
So
the seasonal depression is mostly just, it's not necessarily like because it's winter. It's the sun is not around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the fact of being like going through COVID right now, and the fact that pretty much we were staying at home and I work from home.
You probably get in a cycle where you, like Mikhail, you're saying you didn't even leave the house for a few days, or walk outside the house for a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, I mean, like I know for my family specifically, and this is just something that I've just noticed, like, you know what, like on a Saturday or whatever it is, get up and get dressed, like do something. Don't sit in your PJs all day, because it can kind of just drain you with the blinds closed in your PJs, especially if you just get sucked into like streaming Netflix or something like that. And you just, for all of a sudden 9 hours goes by and you're just like, did I just watch that entire season of that show? And you just kind of feel just kind of like, ugh, I can't believe I just did that. I want to get to the point where we talk about how you overcome it, how you work through it. So I'll ask the question. John, let's start with you, because I know that you also were instrumental in starting Stephen Ministry. For you personally, how have you felt yourself overcome some of the struggles with it, and how have you learned to help others with it? How's God helped you through it? What's He done in your life?
Yeah, God's amazing. We really can do all things through Him. Absolutely, 100%. He is the reason why I don't struggle with it anymore. I'm not saying it's not there, but I don't struggle with it anymore. That doesn't mean that everybody at this table can say that, or everybody out there can say that, or everybody out there will be able to say that someday. And it doesn't mean that their relationship with God is insufficient. I just want to put that out there because it's a real thing. And again, like we've talked about, everybody has different degrees of it and it affects everybody differently. So I do want to put that out there. This is just for me specifically. I look at it now as very much the way the Apostle Paul looks at the thorn in his side. God uses my depression, my anxiety to draw me near to him, to keep me focused on him. Without it, I'm a sinful man and I wouldn't be focused on him. So I'm grateful for it. I've learned to embrace it. I've learned to embrace the struggle. I've learned to embrace the highs and the lows. And I've grown in my faith tremendously because he's proven that he definitely is for me and that he is with me. And that through his promises in the word and through my prayer and my seeking him, he's battles for me. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean I don't face it daily. I wake up every day feeling like I have the cloud over my head, like Eeyore, from Winnie the Pooh. But the sun comes out because I know what my focus needs to be. So in regards to COVID, for about 2 or 3 days, I was very overwhelmed, very nervous about COVID, very stressed about getting sick. But I really leaned into God and I decided I need to get to work. I need to get moving and do things. And so I just, I've learned over the years, I'm 47 years old. I've been battling with this for a long time. Even before infertility as a kid, I had issues with, never feeling adequate and withdrawing and staying in my room and all of that. So I had a long time of really working this out in my mind. And what works and what doesn't, through the trainings that I've been through and just the different positions and places that God's put me in, I've seen him work. So I embrace it. I hate saying that because I know the enemy hears that and he's going to throw a spiritual attack at me because he gets me there. But I'm brave enough and I'm confident enough that I know the Lord has won and I trust in that. And so what I love about that is it gives me the opportunity to have an experience, a testimony to share with people who are on their way to trying to figure it out or who are in the midst of it. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Well, while we're kind of talking about helping, how do people search out? You both are Stephen ministers. Yeah. So how do people seek that out? And how do I want to encourage people that if they're struggling with it, like that this is a ministry that our church has to offer. And we've talked about, there's an episode not too long ago where I brought you and Garrett Ward and we talked about what Stephen ministry is. So you can go back and listen to that. But how does somebody seek out help with that?
Yeah, so if you know Garrett Ward or I, you can come and approach us directly. We also, the easiest way would just be go to our website, www.springhills.org, and go under Care Ministries. There's a tab for ministries. You go under Care Ministry, and you'll see Stephen Ministry. And it explains what we are, and it talks about the fact that we're called by God to walk alongside you. We're not therapists, but we're going to spiritually be there for you, and we're going to facilitate God's process of caring for you. And we're not going to leave you. We're going to support you through prayer, through spending time together, and through listening.
And it's confidential.
It's all confidential, 100%. Men meet with men, women meet with women. And on there's just a little questionnaire, and you can sign up, and we'll get you plugged in. We understand when people reach out to Stephen Ministry that they're feeling it, so we do our very best to get you plugged in quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you happen to be somebody that feels you might be equipped to be a Stephen Minister, same thing. Contact you guys.
Contact us, and we'll get you set up for our next
Steve
training.
Fiano,
or
right?
Steve Fiano. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's keep talking about that. Mikhail, Brielle, anything else? I think the question I started with was just dealing with it now on a regular basis. How are you overcoming it? What is it that that helps you? Or obviously, like you said, John, it's not that you don't struggle with it as much anymore, but it's still there. But I know Mikhail, like you mentioned, this week was already a tough week. So how do you deal with it?
Yeah. So this week was tough because I've got a 4.5-month-old at home, and my wife is back to work. So this was the first week of me dealing with him alone. And that was just a learning experience, but really trying. And for me, what has helped tremendously is like the art that I have, being able to put my pain, my happiness, whatever it may be, into my art. So I always say, like, if you have some type of way to express yourself, don't let that be snuffed by the world. Like, go after that art, whether you're a painter, a poet, whatever it is, however, like, insignificant you feel like it may be, that is healing for you. Like, even if no one hears my music, it's still healing for me. And that is one of the greatest gifts we can give to ourselves. And then really learning, it was 1 Corinthians, I believe, where the Bible says that God won't put more on us than we can bear. And
1 Corinthians 10:13.
Yeah. And I went back and forth with that scripture a lot, because as I was dealing with depression for the first time, people would like quote that scripture at me. And I was like, well, I don't feel like I can bear this. So like, why are you saying that to me? Because it sure feels like I can't deal with this. And people just kept quoting it to me. But what God revealed to me about that is that we aren't supposed to bear everything for ourselves, that is what Jesus is here for. And that was a game changer in my life, knowing that you are at times going to not feel okay. And that's really when he is here to take some of that weight from us. And that is a complete 360 when we're able to give some of that up and to just approach God from a very vulnerable place and say, like, I don't know what to do. Because a lot of times we make prayer so like formal, but that conversation with God and can you take some, like, step into my life in whatever kind of way you need to, because this feels like so much. And having that type of relationship with God where you can approach him that way whenever you are feeling overwhelmed is huge. And knowing that he's always going to be there to relieve that weight from you is amazing.
Yeah. What about you, Brio?
I got a lot.
Go for
Took
it.
notes. For me, the depression, I always see it in hindsight. But I'm trying to learn the art of mindfulness, of paying attention to what's going around or what I'm feeling inside and giving that a moment. Like if I grouchy and get mad at somebody, I have to sit back and think about, why am I doing this? Or why am I sleeping so much? What's going on? So it's always that. And whenever I have a hard time, I'm a prayer warrior. So I'm like Mikhail, thank you for saying that. We don't have to be formal with God in our prayers. I always say, hey, God, what's up? It's like having a conversation. And I'm a talker. I have the gift of gab. And if I'm really in a bad place, I will sometimes pick up the phone and call somebody like John or my best friend or somebody I know I can talk to and just be me and be bleh. And I think that's important for people to realize, is that when you're feeling not so good, that sometimes just picking up the phone and saying, I don't feel good, is enough to get you out of that hole, or enough to get you into that place where you know you're in a bad place and you do something about it. And it's really hard to come to that. I think therapy is so important. Mindfulness, prayer, always giving it to God, surrendering it to him. I mean, even the littlest thing, we have to learn to surrender every single little thing to God. And that's important to me, because I don't just go, surrender everything to God. I sometimes have to realize, okay, for this one little part, I'm going to surrender this to God and just do it in pieces. I think people get overwhelmed when they just say, surrender everything. No, do it in pieces when you're ready to actually surrender it to him. And he will help you in no matter what, and he will give you the strength. So,
Matthew 28, where it talks about, come to me all who are weary.
I was just going to read that. Yeah.
I'm pulling it up here.
I got it right here. No, I pulled it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the next question I want to ask is, what does the Bible say about depression?
Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's there to share in what we're going through, and he's strong enough to take it on and deal with it. And that's what we need to remember.
And part of the time when we're dealing with something, a lot of the time, when we feel like, well, why is God letting me go through this? It's oftentimes, and I'm not going to say this about dealing with depression, because it's not something that's necessarily an effect of your choices, right? But at the same time, it is still our responsibility to surrender it to God, whether it's in
You're
pieces, or it's our responsibility to to lay that on him.
You're right.
And he wants you to.
He wants
That's
you
the
to.
amazing thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, here we think about it. I think about this every now and then, just because it helps me sometimes with my relationship with God to remember how small I am and how big he is. The fact that there's 4 of us sitting around this table, if we were all 4 to go to one person and unload all of our issues on this one person, that one person would not be able to help us all, right? Which is why Steve Ministry,
No,
you're one-on-one.
Totally true, one-on-one.
But you look at God is there for every
Everybody.
single person. And it's not like, oh, I don't have time for this person because I'm working with
No.
John. It's everybody all the time. And to remember that it's like, you're not doing anything to what's the word I'm looking for? It's on my
Bother
tongue.
him.
To bother God.
Dude, he's the
or-
Alpha, the Omega, brother. He's the
Yeah.
beginning and the end. He can handle it. He laid he told Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? I mean, come on. This is the guy,
Yeah.
right? He's it, right?
We always talk about, no problem is too big for God.
Yeah.
You're not going to inconvenience him.
oh.
And that's the word I was looking for, by the way.
That's great. No,
Inconvenience.
that's
There we
spot
go.
on.
No, I was thinking today that just like there's no problem too big for God, there's also no problem
Too
too
little.
small.
Totally,
Yeah.
dude.
'Cause
Totally.
I know, like myself, I often feel like this is like not worth praying about, but that's ridiculous. Like the whole point of the relationship with God is we're supposed to be able to bring whatever to him, and there is nothing too small. So if it's on your mind, if you need help with it, he wants us to come to him and bring it to him, and that's just something we have to constantly remind ourselves of, that
Yeah,
you're not
That's really
bugging
good,
God.
Mikhail.
He knows.
Yeah.
Look at
Already
David,
knows.
man.
Yeah.
Well-
David was, he's one of the most up and down people that we see, right? And
One of
look at the Psalms that he wrote.
One of
and-
the Psalms I had was 42, man, where he's just up and down, literally ministering to himself throughout it.
It's a
and he's
teeter-totter.
crying out to God, and then he's trusting in the truth that God's sovereign and God's got it under control, and then he's doubting this, but never doubts God. But he's just he knows that he can go to God and just convey whatever he's feeling, unload, big or small. And now he was big. He was
42 is the
42.
one we always Martin
we
Lloyd,
all-
right?
yeah.
The why art thou so down?
exactly. He was his son had overtaken the kingdom, and so he was kicked out. Right. And so he can't worship in his temple. He can't be king over his kingdom. And he's just freaking, and it's like God's there and he knows that. And it's such a great example for us. And you were asking, and we were talking about, is it okay for Christians to be, have depression? Well, Jesus descended from David. I mean, he's
Job.
part of the covenant.
Job.
Job. Totally.
Elijah.
Love to bring up
Elijah.
Job.
Jonah.
It's not
No.
like it's some kind of new
No.
2020 thing, right?
Here's the big one. What did our Lord, and like we talked about before, where was our Lord and Savior in the garden? Who did he go to?
Is there
And his
any
biggest
other way,
dismayment.
God? Is there any other way
Take
to
this
do
cup
this?
from
Yeah.
me.
I want to talk about next. I want to talk about something that I think can be probably a misconception in different ways. I want to talk about medication for somebody who's struggling with depression or anxiety. As John, that you talked about that as well. A lot of times I think the same kind of thing. Like there's been some. I mean I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody, so this is why I'm asking this question. Why would some people say that it's not okay for Christians to be medicated, and what's the opposite side of that conversation of yes, it's okay for Christians to be medicated that are clinically depressed?
It's a disorder, so I'm going to just go back. It's a chemical imbalance, and sometimes we can't balance our own chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't have any issue, I've heard people saying that because you're Christian or another religion that you should not be taking medication. But if a doctor is prescribing it and you feel that that's the only way you're going to be able to walk out the door and live a normal life, then do it. I've been taking medication. I don't even know how long it's been. I call it my happy pill.
You got a happy light and a happy pill.
I know. I didn't even realize that, but I call that my happy pill because it can.
Just be aware of the happy drinks, okay?
No, yeah, exactly. But it helps to get to that root of life and get to your true feelings and be able to live your life honestly and honorably, and to be there for everybody and be there for yourself. It's kind of part of your self-care. Take care of yourself. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody.
And does it allow you to heal? John, you mentioned that too, right? Like that it allowed you to work on it.
It did. I really think, this world's such a mess. I mean, it's distorted and like sin's taken over everything. And part of that is our mental state, our the way, we're even, we're born into a sinful world. So we're coming into this world fallen and broken. So there's going to be, it's not just we commit sin. Sin's affected everything, right? It's our development or just who we are. So there's disorders, there's imbalances. I mean, it's just part of this world we live in. So you have to understand, I think you have to accept that and understand that also, for me and from others that I've spoken through, I know God worked in my time on medication, and I wasn't on it for a long period of time, but during that time, he used it to be able to clear my mind enough to where I could focus on what he wanted me to know about him. And so I was able to mentally process that out, take what I learned and moved forward. Again, though, that doesn't mean just because I got off of medication that I'm a better Christian than Brielle because
Sure.
she's still on medication.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that for everybody. It has nothing to do with that. And all of us experience it totally differently. And all of us, God, I believe, speaks to us differently and heals us in different ways. And, if for Brielle, God's using that happy pill to, allow her to navigate this
Storm.
time in her life or storm in her life, fine.
Yeah.
I think that's where we need to be with it mentally.
It's a hard
How we
conversation.
need to look at it. It's a very hard conversation.
Because it's the same thing. I mean, it's not just for this. I've heard the same thing with people dealing with chronic pain. And
yeah.
And
I'm never
I had the same thing with, again, dealing with ADD. Like I was on medication when I was younger. I don't know where I was told that you shouldn't be. But I remember feeling like I need to not do this. I got to figure this out. And then for years, my wife and we met and, we got married, and she had kind of just noticed, like, why do you just walk away from me in the middle of a conversation? And then finally I went back to the doctor, and it was like, you know what? I'm going to try this again. And then she was like, it's nice that you come home from work now and I actually feel like you're here because you're focused here. And it's like, yeah, that's honestly, I'd come home from wherever I was, and it's like I can't just go, okay, that's done. Now I'm home and it's family time. It'd be like everything's just jumbled together, and that's not healthy for our marriage. It's not healthy for me as a parent with my kids. Like I want to focus on them, and it's so helpful for me to be able to also even just grasp the understanding of what it is that and I don't want to, again, I've said this many times, but I don't want to make light of depression. Very different than ADD, but that's just, trying to put a bridge between the two a little bit,
Yeah, I think you're doing fine. I appreciate your honesty. I think it's wrong of anybody to tell someone, well, you shouldn't or you should. I think if the person that you're speaking with or walking alongside, I think the best thing we can say to them is, seek God, ask God for wisdom.
Definitely pray.
Give you direction, pray into it, and let him reveal to you. And yeah, exactly. Let him reveal to you what's best for you in that situation, and really trust. Should I take it or should I not?
Yeah.
I think that's the best we can do.
Big time. There's it's talking about the relationship we have with God works in that way too, where, if you're unsure about medication or whatever, you can always come to him because it's, everyone's got a different personal conviction. And to both your points, I think it's, I always look out for anything that is like addictive,
Sure.
And do your research and everything. But we also, like here we are in 2021, and we've progressed so much as humanity, and God put so much on this earth for us. And in the beginning of time, we maybe didn't know what every specific thing was for. But as time progresses, we learn that, there's different chemical imbalances, and we can take something and this can help change your mood. And
That's well said.
Yeah, and it really is, it shouldn't be something that's so like taboo, like you've failed if you need something to help you. And yeah, I would say it's your personal conviction.
Also, I mean, I this is probably a topic for another podcast episode, but it'd probably be good to talk about also the people that maybe deal with depression and have also struggled with some kind of substance abuse, and talk about the same thing, because I'm sure it's different for everybody. Like we've said numerous times throughout this podcast, everybody's experience is going to be different, and then the way that you're battling it, the way that you're seeking help is going to be different. And I think ultimately what you need to know is it's just got to start with God. You got to start with prayer, because if you try to do it without God, I guarantee you it's going to come crashing down. It's not going to work out for you. Even if it seems like it's working out for a while, it's going to come crashing down. I want to start wrapping up here, but I do want to talk specifically about a few more things with, we mentioned Stephen Ministry already, but Mikhail, I want to ask you, how can we come alongside people that we know, people we care about, our friends, our family, and help them deal with it? And then I want to ask you about your music as well, how you've seen that. You came here and you spoke to, there's about 100 students here, junior high and high school students here when you came and you had your performance, whatever, I don't know, you call it performance, right?
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I don't know,
your show. I'm not sure. Normally we
constantly.
did worship at that point, but we just had the special night where we had you just put on a concert.
Right.
Yeah. So how have you been able to help others through your own experiences?
Listening is a huge thing. For me, it took so long for me to open up about my depression, that a lot of people just need to talk it out. And many times you can talk about something to someone and kind of talk yourself out of it into a better place just by actually speaking about how you feel inside. So I would say that, it's better in that case to just listen to someone than it is to just throw out chunks of advice, especially if you don't know exactly what you're talking about, if you haven't dealt with it. So be easy on the advice and go all out when it comes to hearing them. Just allow them to just open up. Don't judge.
Don't try to fix their problem.
Space. Yeah, many times people just need someone that they can confide in, and to know that you're a trusted person that they can come to and just talk to. That's huge. And helping them, leading them to a place where they maybe could get advice, such as Stephen Ministry, that is huge as well. That you can point them in the right direction, because not everyone deals with the same issues. Like I haven't dealt with ADHD. I wouldn't know what advice to give you. So it's just.
And if you tried to give me advice, I'd probably stop listening halfway through. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose.
Like, yeah, that's good. Oh, hold on.
Right. Yeah. So just hearing them out, and just be genuine and real with someone. And if you've dealt with like grief in any kind of way too, like, I know you said you struggled with infertility, and my wife and we had a couple of miscarriages. Last couple of years, and thank you. Yeah.
You, John, you've also, my wife and I too. I don't know if Brielle, if that's something that that's another thing. It's just it's not easy to go through.
No. Yeah. And it's in our case, I know, because everyone, like, that's obviously devastating. So we had a lot of people that were telling us, I'm sorry. A lot of people saying like, oh, it's going to get better and God has a plan for you. But the things that made us feel like the best was just someone like listening, and then being like, man, I feel for you.
Oh,
like,
Brielle's fist bumping. This is a fist bump episode, man.
Well, he's spot on with everything he's saying. I mean, everything he's saying is as someone who's experienced depression, that's what you want from somebody else, and the way we've been trained, and I think Scripture really teaches us this, is that's what we need to do when we care for others.
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned today, Brielle, you mentioned you're a chatter. John, you're a chatter. I'm a chatter. Mikhail, I don't know if you would necessarily classify yourself as a chatter, but sometimes it's hard for chatters to listen. And I think over the years, as you grow and you learn, like, what, even with whatever, it doesn't have to be with somebody that's dealing with depression specifically. It could be with anything. And it's like, even when you're just like, you had a rough day. Sometimes when you get home and your spouse is like, man, today just kind of stunk. And sometimes as a husband, I try to, I want to try to fix the problem. And honestly, my wife does the same thing sometimes. She wants to try to fix the problem. And sometimes we just go, I don't need you to fix it. I need you just to let me talk about it for a minute. and that's going to help me fix it. Like ironically, just if you just listen for a minute, that'll help me fix it.
Yeah.
But and
No
sometimes
one knows
there's no
you
fix.
better than you.
Yeah.
So I mean, God knows you better than you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But no person knows you better than you. So oftentimes when you're talking about your own problems, you can really kind of see a solution within it as you're just talking about it. So just letting people talk is so underrated.
Mhm.
We don't do it enough. Everyone's always trying to just throw out advice and like, well, you should do this. I think you should do this. But really just letting them talk. Like,
And this is a big
listen.
thing of Steve Ministry, right? I mean, they're trained to
Huge
you go
thing.
through like pretty
Yeah.
in-depth training. It's not
Yeah.
just like you go, hey, I want to be a Steve Minister, and you go, all right, welcome to the team. There's an in-depth
We
training.
No
read
way.
a book called The Art of Listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so listening is huge. And to Mikhail's point, first and foremost, if you don't listen to somebody, you don't even know how to pray for them.
Right.
You don't know how to direct them. You can't even come up with a well thought out, prayerful response if you don't first hear what's going on.
Right.
Mhm.
And to his point as well, oftentimes as Stephen ministers in our conversation, so Stephen ministry is all about the process. It's not about, well, we're going to fix you. It's about trusting that God is going to provide the cure and we're going to give the care. We're going to walk alongside this person, and we follow what are called process oriented goals, meaning we're going to listen. We're going to be present. We're going to pray for this person. We're going to bring relevant scripture. We're going to walk alongside. We're going to be dependent, confidential. We're going to provide stability, those kinds of things. And in that provides opportunity for conversation. And to his point, what I was getting at is through that conversation, oftentimes through the person who is dealing with whatever it might be, whether it's depression, grief, whatever, they hear themselves state out what's going on, and they oftentimes hear things that they didn't know were going on, even though
Right.
they spoke it out. But that process of allowing them to speak it out, and you as the minister taking yourself out of it and it being all about them, oftentimes God will reveal what's going on to them just in that. And sometimes they'll be able to navigate and figure things out just by verbalizing what's going on,
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a really quick weird story
Yeah.
to bounce off of that. So it was December 31st, New Year's Eve, and this of 2020. And I really, really wanted tacos. Like I was like, I had been craving tacos for like the whole week. There's this taco place that was doing like a $1 taco deal, and I was like, get tacos. Today's the last day of the deal. Like I was so excited, and they closed at 4, and I was like, all right, it's 3:15. I'm gonna call and place my order. Called, they didn't answer. Called again, they didn't answer, and I was like, okay, I just need to go. So
What's the place? I'm just curious.
El Fagon.
Okay.
It's in Katati, a new place. Great
I-
food.
I had a very similar experience on New Year's Eve. I'm like,
Oh,
I
really?
want a burrito from La Fondita. I'm like,
Oh, my
I got to
gosh.
go get one. They were open on Christmas Day, but not on New Year's Eve. And I was just
Wow.
like, oh, come on, man. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I drive there. I already wasn't having the best day, but I drove there. I get there. I'm like, okay, they close at 4. It was like 3:50. I was like, they gotta let me. They've got to have some like leftover meat, whatever. So I get in there.
Leftover meat?
Is
that what you said?
I'll take the
That is-
scraps.
Yeah. Whatever you got back there.
Scraps
Toss it
on a
on a
tortilla.
tortilla. We're good to go.
So I love, to preface this, I love Mexican food
Yeah, yeah.
so much.
Absolutely.
But
Who doesn't?
so I run in there. I'm like waiting my turn. I get up there, and the guy like turns around, and I'm looking at the counter, and I'm seeing like nothing.
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh great. And he's like, no, we're closed. And I was like, no, you can't. You close at 4. I just checked your Facebook. I checked Google. You close at 4. Like all I want this year is tacos.
All this year.
Yeah, and he was like, no, I can't help you. I'm sorry. So
Wait, you said this is the beginning of 2020?
this was the last day of 2020.
Oh, okay. This is a couple days ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Figures.
So right, yeah. So I get back to the car, and I have like a meltdown,
Oh,
and I was like, why in the world? Like I felt so stupid, like crying over tacos, but in that like meltdown, I realized it wasn't about the tacos. It was this whole year that I felt like I couldn't get anything that I wanted. Like it was right
It's a
in my
representation
grasp.
of the year.
Exactly. And so I'm sitting there in like my pity and just so I'm like angry. I'm frustrated. I'm like, all I wanted was one thing to go right this year. Give me my tacos. And I'm sitting in the car for an hour outside of the parking lot and so frustrated. And the guy comes out that had told me they were closed. And so at this point, it's almost 5. So I'm sitting in the car, he sees me and I see him, and we like exchange a look, and then he goes back in, and then he comes back out and he starts walking up to the car, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. So I roll down the window, put my mask on, and he's like, you're the guy that wanted tacos, right? I was like, yeah, that was me. And he was like, some lady called, placed an order for 40 tacos, and she never came and got them.
Leftover meat.
Leftover meat. So he was like, I have these tacos. I just want to go home. Do you want them?
He gave you 40 tacos?
He gave me 40 tacos.
Wow.
So on my way home, I was
And
like,
you
this
didn't
was...
call me?
next time.
Wow.
Next time. So on my way home, I have a lot of emotions. So I was like, I just had one of the weirdest breakdowns I've ever had in my life. I'm driving home with 40 tacos in the trunk, and I'm trying to figure out what this was all about.
So many tacos, you had to put them in the trunk. I love it.
That's great.
Yeah, it was on a platter.
This is
This
great.
is awesome.
So glad you're sharing this.
Yeah, thank you. So
Wow.
what I kind of learned in all of that, and what I took away as the story, was that these things that I felt like I deserved, like I deserved to go and pay for these tacos, God had other plans. And I ended up not paying for 40 tacos. And it was just kind of like a really interesting period to the end of my year. And God saying that what you feel like was taken away from you, or the things that we feel like we deserve that we just can't get, they're like right out of our reach, that he has something better in store for us.
Amen.
And going into 2021 with that was so amazing. So I felt like that was a great time to share that story. I knew that happened for a reason. I was
Dude,
like,
yes. Bringing tears to my eyes because
Wait,
it's such a
what did your
powerful
wife-
story. Wow.
What did your wife say when you walked in with 40 tacos?
she had no idea. So I did the shutdown thing. I did the spiral thing. So all she knew was I went to go get tacos, and then it's over an hour.
And you come back with 40 of them?
Because
I got tacos.
Right. I hadn't let her know what was going on. So I'm just sitting in the car.
She's in the dark.
And she's like, what happened? And so when I call her, I'm like, I have 40 tacos.
No context.
Right.
Nothing. That's awesome. You've heard of Taco Truck, but have you heard of Taco Trunk?
Right.
Because Mikhail's got Taco Trunk.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think
hit me
this the taco story is also a good way to end this
Great
this
stories.
on. So, real quick, Mikhail, how can we listen to your music? Where are you at on social media? Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah. So I go by True Lyric. It's TRU space Lyric. I'm on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, you name it. I'm very active on my social media. So Facebook, it's True Lyric Music. Instagram, True Lyric Official. And yeah, if you've connected to anything that I've said and you need someone to talk to or whatever, shoot me a message. I don't do the whole like celebrity kind of thing. So like,
so you said Spotify, Apple Music, pretty much anywhere. You got some music videos too, right, on YouTube?
Yes, yeah, plenty of. We put a lot of time and energy into music videos and creating like little mini movies.
And how would you describe what the style of music that you are?
That is the question that I can never seem to answer.
I think I know why too, because I think I asked you this when you came here.
Yeah, no, it's very different. So it's hip hop. But I hate saying that because you think of like.
But you even got a trumpeter. It's not just hip hop. You've got a unique sound. It's really cool.
Thank you.
And you've actually we're talking almost a year ago when you were here, right?
Yeah.
The kids loved it, by the way, because we normally at Motion Night we do worship music, and in all honesty, a lot of these kids don't understand worship music. They don't understand what we're doing.
Right.
So it's like it's a lot of just deadpan faces. Not with you. When you were here, man, they connected to it. And all of us were I was running sound for you that night, and I was just like, this is perfect for these kids.
That's great.
Because
Thank you.
So it was awesome. So I'm glad that you're able to come. I'm not exactly sure when this is going to air, but we are in 2021 now. We've got our new series coming on called Jesus and Money that Brett is starting this weekend. So that's January 9th and 10th. And I think this episode's probably going to air somewhere in the middle of January. So we'll still be in the middle of that series. But you can catch that online. If you're not ready to be here on campus, we do have a lot of options for how you attend church here. We're trying to make sure people feel comfortable. We've got the indoor seating that's very socially distanced. We've got the mask-only zone. We've got the big bay doors open so you can watch from outside, also socially distanced. Or we've got the screen outside. You could watch from the tables and be spread out there too. So we believe it's very important for us as a church to be together. So don't isolate yourself. Be around. We're here for you. We love worshiping with you. We love being here on campus with all of you. So if you're not ready to be on campus, it is online as well. So you can check it out, springhills.org, and you can find out where to watch that. So, all right, we'll see everybody this weekend.